What's up, guys? Heretic U here, and I'm gonna start this video by doing what is
Heretic U here,
like a YouTube
I'm gonna start this video
tradition, which is basically most of the videos I see, the person always starts off by apologizing for not putting out videos recently. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Most of my reasoning, though, make a long story short, my computer took a crap on me, and I had to send the hard drive just wouldn't spin, so I had to send it out for repairs, and it's back, but it came back, and I had to reinstall everything, and so right now I'm using crappy Windows Movie Maker to make this video. I just haven't gotten around to installing my normal software. So enjoy the low res, people. Enjoy it. Anyways, so a lot has happened since my last video. It was right before Comic-Con, and what I wanted to do was at Comic-Con I was demoing the Forgotten King from Super Dungeon Explorer. It's basically Super Dungeon Explorer 2.0, and I got a bunch of games in, and I just wanted to talk about the major differences between the original Super Dungeon Explorer and Forgotten Kings. They've done, in my opinion, they've really cleaned up the rules and really addressed some what a lot of people would consider game-breaking mechanics that sort of made the first Super Dungeon Explorer. Well, it wasn't not playable, but it was definitely, I think there was some the heroes were definitely the game favored the heroes, and you had to be a really good console if you were facing off with a group of veteran players. And I think the overall changes, I would say, if I could just sum it up really quickly, it kind of balances the console and the players a little bit better. There are some things that I don't don't really care for, but overall I would say that the changes are positive. And I thought, I haven't seen anyone do a video on something like this, and so I figured, hey, it's kind of fresh on my mind. Let's talk about it. So right off the bat, the Forgotten King box set actually comes with 2 sets of rules. So you have classic mode and arcade mode, and they made a pretty big hubbub about arcade mode, but I still like the classic mode, and for purposes of this video I'm not going to talk about arcade mode, just because I haven't played enough of it to really form an informed opinion on it. I have initial impressions, but whatever. So we're going to compare classic mode 1.5 or 1.0 to 2.0 here, and so the biggest difference, and the one that I think you can argue either pro or con, and I could go either way on, is the removal of the adventure board. That is a big change, and to me, I kind of like it. The way they've now done, the way they divvy out loot now is basically you get for every minion or monster or boss monster that you kill, you're going to get 1 loot card to a maximum of 3 per turn. So what that does, compared to the old board now, if you remember the adventure board, I think it was every 3 wounds was basically it would drop loot, and that would favor a lot of heroes that have AoE attacks, because that hero could potentially get like 2 drops, maybe even 3 drops, depending on the situation. And I think the game already kind of favors heroes with AoE abilities over ones that don't. And so this was a pretty good, to me, it's a pretty good balancing factor. I know a lot of people on the other side of the argument, they would say that the adventure board gave some structure, like heroes would you would see that the end all, the boss monster could spawn while there were extra spawn points, or while there were still spawn points on the table, and that was probably the scariest thing about 1.0 and 1.5 was that, hey, if there were spawn points on the table, that boss would get an extra activation. It made bosses super badass in the old edition. So basically, what would happen in the older version of the game is that the heroes would dominate early on, and when the boss fight came, if depending on if there were spawn points or not, that boss, if he had extra activations, could just devastate, could just single out a hero and destroy him, take out a key hero in the game, and really make that party hysterical. So it was sort of this climax at the end where it was kind of a breeze really early on, and then as soon as you get to the boss monster, all of a sudden you're in hard mode, and I could see that players would stress out of taking out spawn points in the older game. Now in the newer game, it's pretty simple. The spawn points now you just spawn every monster, okay? And the way you, instead of building up to 16-bit mode, where you get your mini bosses and everything like that, for every if you destroy a spawn point, the next turn the console's he gets to spawn a mini boss. So right off the bat, it gets to a position of the game gets pretty serious early on. You destroy a spawn point, a mini boss is coming, and if you destroy 2 spawn points, 2 mini bosses are coming. And it can get insane from that. That's another. So that's probably the biggest change in the game, is the adventure board. So you're gonna, that's it's if you're going through the box, you're like, where's the adventure tracker? It's just not there. And pay attention to how they now spawn. So, as I mentioned before, spawn points now just spawn everything, okay? And that's insane. However, when they do spawn, they take a wound. And if it's a double spawn point, they're wounded twice. It's kind of a strange rule. I don't understand that thematically. I'm trying to find it. I've got the rule book in front of me, and I'm trying to get to the part where they talk about spawning, which is a huge difference alone. I mean, you're now facing the full wrath instead of just 4 skulls worth of a monster, of a spawn point. You are now dealing with everything it can. The only exception is that basically monsters have a 2 square space around the spawn point, and if you can't fit, then they go back to the the spawning pool. So, and like monsters with big bases, as long as part of their base is in at least one of the 2 square radius, they are legal. Now, console turns pretty much the same. You still do only get to activate 4 skulls of monsters at a time. However, there's monsters, which are 4 skulls, can be activated during that same turn for free. So it can get pretty crazy depending on your spawn point. So if your spawn point has a big monster in it, you can activate 4 little minion guys and a big guy in one turn, forcing the heroes to, if you're a smart console, you might want to, you could single out the healer, or if you've got a group of new people, kind of spread out the damage and make everybody just kind of participate. You'll notice in the box set there's explore cards. These are also new. These trigger whenever you enter a new dungeon tile, basically, and so random effects can happen, and so that's something that's brand new. You also notice the thing called princess coins. Princess coins are ways of rezzing dead heroes, so it's no longer the resurrection charm, that one in I don't know how many loot cards you had a chance to get that resurrection card. Now you can actually get it by getting a princess coin. They also introduced the notion of a backpack, which I like. So instead of this, loot drops in the old game, when you fight, you get, let's say you inflict 3 wounds, loot drops, and then it's kind of like everyone can look at it and equip it right away. No, in this case, what they've changed is that it actually goes into this backpack. Things like potions and loot, princess coins, keys to treasure chests will end up in this ominous backpack that everyone has access to. And yeah, so you can't. They've introduced a new part of the turn, which is called the power-up phase. And the power phase, you can. It's kind of happens in between turns, and that's when you can equip equipment from the backpack. One really big change about this, besides the concept of the backpack and the concept of, hey, you gotta wait to equip, is they've stuff that you discard, they put it in bold in the rulebook. It's for each treasure card. Now, so we know that treasure cards are red and they come from treasure chests. Loot cards are blue, which means before you used to be able to sack loot for potions or to get rid of status effects. Now it has to be a treasure card. So status effects are going to be very difficult to get rid of. Very difficult. Also, big changes in the potions. But this was we knew this was kind of coming from 1.5, where now they've cleaned up the potion, and I think this is where the balancing goes out, because there were all kinds of shenanigans you could do with potions in the old rules, because you could use potions anytime you wanted to. Now, they've limited to, you can, a hero can use one potion a turn. It counts as a free action, okay? And depending on the color, so let's say emergency potions you would use during the console's turn, in reaction to something. But red potions are offensive, and they're single use, and you would do them on, your turn. You can still use other heroes' potions and get their effects, but you can't just do it any time you want, which was a ridiculous rule in the old game, and that's where I think most of the game-breaking stuff would happen. You would get into these like potion loops with certain characters, and it's just non-stop, like a non-stop turn or whatever. Big changes in like basic actions. They have things that they've kind of added, as well as just that all heroes can do. So, for example, one of the things you can do is try to pick the lock of a treasure chest. So now treasure chests are locked. You can't just run up and spend an action to open them. You actually have to spend an action and roll dice, and it's a dexterity check. They still have run, and but now they have things like explore, where you can draw explore cards. You can scavenge. You can even bandage or conjure pets. Pets are now this special kind of loot that you can get, granting you pets. That's also new. So you can see there's a lot of humongous changes. I think the ones that balance the game out the most are the way they've done the area effects, and I think that did need to be nerfed. Now, like on the let's say you have an aura 1, not only affects the models inside the 1 square radius. Before, certain effects, if a model was touching the outside of, let's say, a lance area effect, that model would be affected as well. And I think that needed to be done. Again, I still think if I had a choice between a healer character and a healer character with an area of effect, the area effect's gonna win every time. There's not much. I would say there's not much, like if a guy doesn't have an AoE, he's got to have something really good for me to want to choose him over someone that has an AoE. Also on equipment cards, they have introduced this kind of a tie-in to Relic Knights, these Affinity Crystals. So certain items, if your character matches that, has an affinity to that color, they will unlock a bonus of that item. So that's really cool, because then now you can there's more diversity in choosing certain characters. Somebody might have a red affinity or a green affinity, and that could change. If he gets the when it comes to divvying out treasure between the party, that you can look at that, and that could be a very big determining factor on who you want to actually give that item to. So I mean, there's a ton of changes, guys. Most of them really good. I still think the game, I think it's faster now, which is great. I think it's more balanced between console and players, which is great. I still don't think they've done enough with certain classes, like tanks, for example. I don't feel like they've done anything to make a tank. If there was like in arcade mode, there's an aggro mechanic, but in classic mode, the console pretty much chooses who he wants to attack. and it'd be cool if they introduce some kind of mechanic where, the like certain tanks can either through a support action or a potion or something force the monsters to move and attack him instead of the rest of the group. That'd be cool. They need something like that, and it's something that I hope they develop the classes a little bit more. Right now, the way I see SDE is basically, there's characters that can heal, and there's characters that have AoE, and then there's everybody else. Range to me is not that big a deal because the dungeon tiles are pretty relatively small. So, I have a guy that can shoot, let's say, eight spaces away. Everybody's moving 6 spaces. You know what I'm saying? So, I suppose there are times when range, when it comes to like divvying out priority targets, maybe there's targets down the way that just need to be taken out without wasting movement. There's some advantage, but it's not a clear, advantage as much as AoE is to a single attack. And I think I've been harping on that the whole time, but whatever. And overall, the models, I didn't even mention the models. The quality of models have improved. The sculpts, the detail on them are great. The board game materials itself are always good. It's always that nice thick card stock for the potions and stuff. As far as the starting heroes versus one box set or the other, I could go on for another 20 minutes about that, but I don't. I think definitely if you own the first game and maybe it was a little disappointing to you, I would say give Forgotten Kings a chance. That'd be my closing argument about this game. Yes, it still has a tendency to kind of drag, especially if you're dealing with a party of new players that don't understand. Like, you got to push forward in this game. You need to. It's not camping dungeon explorer. It's it's super. Or I screwed that up. It's not super dungeon camp game or sitting on your whatever. I can't come back from that. I tried. Whatever. This video is 23 minutes long. Jesus Christ. There are changes in the cards. They just kind of cleaned it up. Now you can look on the person's card and you can see exactly like, oh, there's like the tabby mage. Oh, she can hit with her staff at one square away, or she can use a spell. There's these little symbols. You just have to look for them. So that's a neat little thing that they did to kind of clarify things. Overall, I think it's a superb game, and I think if you were one of those guys that wanted more from SDE, want the rules cleaned up, I think they moved it in a good direction. And again, hey, thanks for listening to this rant. I know there's a lot of people that kind of ask me SDE questions, and so if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll be glad to answer them, and I'll see you on the next one.